Shark Tank doesn't mean like you made it. It means nothing. So Without is an impact first startup where we're trying to solve real social and environmental problems. How do you fundamentally increase the economic value of waste? So if you make kachra more valuable, then all of the incentives align. I think charity and sympathy are really hard to scale. We've been training for the Olympics for the last 3.5 years now, but that doesn't mean like, you win the Olympics. You have to still go and perform at the Olympics.
Hey Anish, welcome to the show. Looking forward to talking to you. How are you doing?
Good. And thank you, Vedant, for this platform to talk about our work.
A lot of questions to ask, a lot of things to know from you. But before we begin, while most of our viewers have heard you on Shark Tank, just give a short, brief introduction about Without, what do you do, the problem you solve, how do you solve it, and what are you envisioning?
Sweet. Yeah. Thank you, Vedant. So Without is an impact first startup where we're trying to solve real social and environmental problems. For instance, we are um, working on solving the waste issue in India. Not only recycling impossible to recycle plastic waste, but also empowering waste pickers out of poverty and being socially inclusive because you have to look at the waste problem holistically. That's what we do. We recycle multi-layered plastic or your packets of chips or chocolate wrappers or your ataka packets. And we convert them into high quality materials and products like sunglasses. So we made the world's first recycled sunglasses from packets of chips. But our work is more than that. We are looking to solve. I mean, sunglasses are not going to solve the waste problem, but they're a strong proof of concept that you can take this kind of unrecyclable plastic waste and extract materials from it and convert them into some sort of high quality, more recyclable work while empowering waste pickers into out of poverty. So yeah, that's the work we do. Still early stage, still a long way to go. Um, so yeah.
Okay. I want to start before everything, the beginning of the so called climate entrepreneur Anish Malpani. And I look at your journey, this is one heck of a roller coaster, I would say. You are graduate in sports management and finance, then you did 5 years into the finance industry in US, then you shifted towards the social entrepreneurship, became a mentor for some time, then into sustainability. Now, how did this journey take place from here to in a completely different place?
I mean, yeah, I think like the first part of the journey was very conventional in the sense that, yeah, so I was born in India. I grew up in Dubai. I spent my formative years there. Then I was like really into sports, and I'm still am. And I was like, I want to make a career in sports. So I went and studied sports management. But then quickly realized in my first 3 months in the US that this is a waste of time because it was like a very expensive program and I wasn't really learning anything. So I was like, okay. And the good thing about the American education is that you can merge, like you can add, subtract majors. So the university I went to had a good business school, and all the cool kids were in the business school. So I was like, okay, let me join the business school. And then, so when I joined the business school, I kind of fell into the rat race. I was like, okay, I want to stay here. I want to get my visa. I want to get a job. I mean, I was, in finance and I want to make money. I want to move to New York. And so I was kind of fell into the rat race. And, I think at one point my dream was to like go to New York and live there. And I remember when I moved to New York, I was like, this is it. I'm not going to move. This is the greatest city in the world. But you started, life, I mean, takes you in different ways, in different directions. I feel like I learned a lot about myself when I was in New York. I realized that it's not only about the money. I realized I was very lucky, very fortunate. And I also realized I was very depressed because I was like, becoming a worse person. I was making rich people richer. I felt like there was no point to life. It was very nihilistic. So yeah, it was a very important moment in my life. And then it gave me a chance to reflect and all that. And probably the best thing that ever happened because then I was like, okay, I can use this luck and privilege that I have to do something more meaningful. So then the goal became, okay, how do I come back to India and work on solving real social environmental issues? But then I don't want to be this guy from New York who thinks he knows everything. Like I hadn't lived in India for 20 years, so I didn't really know the country. I also didn't know what it took to make change happen, how to make impact happen. So I quit my job in New York. And then the plan was like, okay, let me learn about the impact space. Let me learn about India. And I wanted to kind of learn about the development space outside of India before coming to India, because the idea was that once you come to India, I don't want to leave, right? Because if you want to make change happen, it takes decades, many years for this to happen. So after I quit, I was in Guatemala, Central America for 15 months
Yeah.
working with local entrepreneurs. And I was in Nairobi, and then in Kenya, again, working with local entrepreneurs. And then, in December 2019, I came to India. So I think that's like, so honestly, I'm very lucky to be able to do all of this. I feel like, I have a lot of choice and agency and options in my life. So, very fortunate.
All right. And after you did all this, you came to India to solve on the development sector, like you said, solve the social and environmental problem here. How did you stumble upon this particular problem? Something must have happened in
Yeah,
between.
so my burning is always been around poverty and injustice. I feel like poverty is one of the most it's a man-made injustice. It's collateral damage for all the capitalistic success that we have, right? So I researched poverty. I was like, okay, what is poverty? Who are the poor? How does this work? What are the ways to deal with this? And then while researching poverty, I came across the waste picker population who live really poor lives and the waste management issue, which was very fascinating because more than half the waste, 50 to 80% of the waste in India ends up in landfills or in oceans.
Yeah.
So you're like, wait a minute, like there's this untapped potential, there's like this economic value in waste. There's this environmental issue that is caused by waste. And there are these like close to 40 lakhs, on 1.5 to 4 million waste pickers who live really poor lives. So I felt like that became a very interesting, complex problem. Where I mean, the most important part was I think I saw an end goal. I saw utopia. Like I saw, okay, theek hai, where do I take this? Which was like I don't think waste picking should exist as an occupation. Nobody should be resort to picking up kachra or waste as a job, right? As a job of choice. That should not be the that should not be the case. And I also felt like there is economic value in waste, right? So I was like, okay. And also, it's like when you replace waste pickers, you don't want to like displace them into negative path. I mean, it has to be a positive displacement into
Mhm.
better livelihoods. So all of those made it a very interesting problem for me to work on.
All right. And as you said in the episode, that for 2.5 years, what started with two desks and a stirrer and a chips packet and all those things that you said, 2.5 years is a long time where you don't know what you're actually going to do, but you're still trying. So, what was going on in your mind? What
Yeah.
were you doing at that time? What were your thoughts? What all happened? I want to know the making of the climate entrepreneur Anish Malpani.
Good question. So I wouldn't say like it's like 2.5 years we were just like confused. That was never the case. I think from the first day, from when we moved into the lab to today, like our overall vision and mission has been very consistent, right? Our mission has been to fundamentally. So before even starting off, I researched for a year India and the poverty space and the waste management space. I volunteered to work for a nonprofit, and I kind of isolated what the hypothesis was that we wanted to work on, which was key. How do you fundamentally increase the economic value of waste? So if you make kachra more valuable, then all of the incentives align to make it, to make sense. Like there's reason to collect it, there's reason to recycle it. Um, so I was like, okay, so that was our goal. Then we had to choose a starting point. And then we always had multi-layered plastic or chips packets in our mind because from my research, it was like it's unrecyclable. It's the black sheep of the plastics family. Nobody wants to do anything about it. The recyclers don't have a solution, so they don't say anything. The manufacturers know it's bad, so they don't say anything, so nobody talks about it as much. We wanted to address that. But we also approached it from first principles. We're like, okay, when I say we start off with two desks, two chairs, a stirrer, and a packet of chips, that means that we were kind of focused on taking these packets of chips and looking at it from a very first principles perspective. Okay, how do you increase the value of this? We knew that the issue was that there are many multiple layers of fused together. So how do you separate the layers? And then we kind of had an end goal. We're like, okay, you have to make this into material that's more recyclable or into products. But yeah, I think so it evolved in the right way, and it's constantly evolving, right? Like we're currently in the middle of what we call without 2.0, which is like, hey, we're not, we're kind of figuring out what the next 2, 10,
Hmm.
20 years are going to mean for us. Because kind of we now understand the landscape and we understand where we need to be. So it always evolves, but this the overall goal, the overall direction has always been constant. And I think we don't have that motivation then you're not going to be able to make progress, right? So this is not like, I don't know. I just meet a lot of entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs keep, everyone's looking for a quick fix or oh, अच्छा idea चाहिए, or want a good idea, but it's just so much more complex than that. We never approach this from like, oh, want a good idea. It was like, no, we're trying to solve a real problem. What's the best way to do it? What's the actual problem? How do what is un, what is not being worked on? So I think when you look at it from all of those perspectives, the motivation is much higher. So I mean, it's always going to be hard. I think it's not supposed to be an easy. And because we're trying to be impact first, it actually is harder because you don't have a singular goal of maximizing profit. Your singular goal is maximizing impact, which is a lot more nebulous, a lot more uh, relative and complex than just a number, right?
Yeah, and that begs a different question altogether. Like, after a point, you should have been to know, now things are solved. Now it's good. Now it's going to go somewhere. I don't think that point ever came. Like, all right, you have a technology, you still don't know whether something is gonna get sold, and that kept on going. So even after I read one of your letters there, uh, after the Shark Tank thing happened, which possibly a very good publicity for Without in the past few months or something. Uh, the letter mentioned how one of the waste pickers who you have employed family has had problems with her house being taken over by a money lender or something, and you simultaneously working on the technology and everything. Now, your distractions are much higher than the distractions of some other entrepreneur, I would say. And how do you get up every morning? What keeps you centered to still keep on going with these distractions, which are much more legitimate?
Yeah, but I don't see them as distractions, right? I see them as necessary parts of the problem that we're trying to solve. And that's the whole thing, right? See, at the heart of what we're trying to do, Vedant, is we're trying to, it sounds really like ambitious, but we're trying to change the way business is done, right? Evolve capitalism to be more than just about making money, right? We cannot live in a world that focuses on maximizing profit at all costs, which means that exploiting the earth, exploiting the people associated, where exploitable people, right? Like exploiting exploitable people is probably one of the biggest sins, I think, right? I think it's harder to break out of that. So I don't see it as a distraction. I see it as an important part of our mission. And so yeah, so I think you like as I said, I think if your core motivation is strong, then there's a lot has to. I mean, it's a lot more like drive. I think some people who are not 100% motivated and who are like only motivated by money or only motivated by. I mean, sometimes money can be a great inspirer. Don't get me wrong. Some people, money
Yeah.
is so important. It can push but or power. But I feel like if you chase pure power, pure money, that it comes with a cost of character, or it can come at the cost of character. And I think some of the biggest companies in the world recently and in the past have not chased profits as a primary goal. It might be a very important goal for some of the people in that organization, but many a time it's not. Like, I mean, and then this is something like people argue about Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and Bezos about like money as their primary goal. Yes, is it a primary goal? Yes, but if they only focus on profits, maximizing profit, they wouldn't be able to create the stuff that they've created. Like it's just not how it works from my perspective. So
uh, is it also the fact that, so when you are working on something like this, all right, every day with the kind of problems you are facing, it's very easy, at least for today's youth in India, completely distracted by other different things, it's very easy to switch to यार इससे अच्छा तो मैं ये कर लूँ, this is much more lucrative, okay. But since you already had that so-called money-based life which you described before in New York, that you had money, you were doing good and all, does the fact that you know that there's nothing that deep about it keeps you centered on this fact? My purpose is finally what is going to help
yeah,
me in
yeah,
the long run.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, I feel like, as I said, I feel very lucky to be able to feel that, right? Like, I think many people don't get a chance to experience all the things that I've got a chance to experience. Everything from living in different parts of the world to being, well, money not being a problem. And it's also how quickly you move through the gears, right? Like if like I think I was in New York when I was 26, at 25 I moved to New York, so I was still young in some ways. So I kind of got it all out of my by 28 or 27. I got it all out of my system. All of the partying and the dumb stuff, and living in a foreign country,
The
and
energy.
working hard. All of that like was out. So like
Yeah.
all of those things aren't very interesting for me, right? Like, oh, travel karna hai, right? Everybody wants to travel, and then it's like, okay, I don't like. There's no desire for me to travel anymore, right? Like, because I'm very lucky to have already done that. Like for me, I'm looking for something more meaningful, and also to be. And this is one thing is really important. Like the work that I do and is not to be the hero, right? It's not to be like, oh, look, मैं कितना, look how amazing I am, because that's also very dangerous. Like the ego gets to your head. It's for my own sanity. It's like selfish in the way that like, okay, I will not like who I am. I will have very low self-worth if I don't do this work. So I feel like it's the most selfless kind of selfishness, and I think that is what makes me come to terms with it. um, and that's really important. And also, I keep tying my success to solving the problem and not some like, oh, how many views, how many likes, how much money. Like, no, it's like we're trying to solve the problem. That is what matters. It's not about me. It's not about without. It's about trying to solve this problem. And that anchor. It's a constant because you keep getting pulled, right? And things like Shark Tank and different things. Like you always, oh, everyone's like, "Arey wow, 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 kya amazing kaam kar rahe ho." Lots of pats on your back, and that can easily get to your head. And you have to kind of be careful, like, remember, like Shark Tank doesn't mean like you made it. It means nothing. It's just one chapter in the story. And if anything, it can be a distraction depending on what you want to achieve, right? There's no rush to become an entrepreneur. Like everyone's, there's so much you have to understand and learn, and before you jump in. I think, and I have your motivations right. Like it's not a fun journey if you're not motivated. So
Do you have any ritual, any exercise, or do you talk to someone when you feel like over? Like, if it's that, it's very natural. We go to Shark Tank, everyone's doing yay, very good. Oh my
mm.
God, what you're doing and all. But you obviously lose sight of work for at least some moment of time. So, is there some ritual or someone you talk to ensure that, hey, if I somewhere go a little bit beyond the tracks, please bring me back? Do you
Yeah,
do
I
this?
think it's a good question. So I think yes, yes, always. Like you care for your mind and your body because you know that all of that is really important and it's all interconnected. So like I meditate, which is okay, which is one thing. I'm very critical of myself, which is one thing. But no, honestly, the main is I have like an amazing support system, right? Of friends and family who believe in me wholeheartedly, who are also very honest and straight up. I can have an honest conversation with them. My friends keep me grounded. I see a therapist, and I think, and I've been seeing a therapist for years, like 2 3 years now. And I think that's important, right? Because I think whether you're down or not down or up, you should always, it's like going to the gym. You need to go to the
Yeah, yeah.
gym. You don't have to wait for depression to be like, oh, therapy ho gaya. So I think
Hmm.
that's something that I feel like it's good hygiene. So that helps keep me sane. But honestly, look, all of those things are tools. How do you use your tool? The most powerful tool is your own mind, your self-awareness. I think Vipassana when I was 21, I think it opened some doors in my mind. Ki, look, in the end, you have to know yourself better than anybody else can know you, and the only way to do that is to like have a constant pursuit of truth and try to be as objective about. Like I get very annoyed when someone tells me or without about like a weakness that we didn't know. Like, oh shit, like
Hmm.
how did we not see this, right? And then I'm very respectful for this person. I'm like, yeah, this person like knows shit. Like this person knows what he's talking about or what she's talking about. Yes, so it's like care, self introspection, then also making sure you're surrounded by the right people who want to see the best in you and the best of you, but who are also like, who keep it real. Like, listen, honestly, all your friends and everything, like in the end, it's your own battle, right? Because then what happens, you choose people who will just, who become like, oh, just always praising you, and you want to be surrounded by the sycophants, right? Sycophants.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily smart either. So in the end, it's like how strong are you mentally? Oh, how pure is your motivation? It comes back to that, and how much you care about truth. And I think that is a journey that everybody has to go down.
And somewhere I think, and this is a perceptive thing, but since you just mentioned it right now, I think this kind of belief system that everyone should be in the pursuit of truth of what we are solving, why we are doing what we are doing, is something you are also trying to imbibe in without as a culture. And a simple example of why I think this is, when I went through the website, below every web page is a small message that says that if you have ideas, hopes, or you want to poke holes in our work, please email us. Nobody generally writes this. And to be open like that, I think this is exactly what you're trying to do. Am I right here?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, and I think we mean it, right? Like it's sometimes hard to hear. I mean, see, I think that when you start early and you start transparent, then it's just easier, right? But if you wait for like 3 years, like, okay, now I'll open myself up for criticism, doesn't make sense. So yeah, I mean, we are, I'm very open to to criticism, and always seeking it, and also very transparent in our work, like in the team, as in like even to the world, but even internally, like we don't hide anything. Everyone knows everyone's salary. It's on a public portal, and so we're very transparent about everything, about where we are in the company, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, about each other. Like, one-on-ones are like it's like everyone has a one-on-ones with almost everybody, like at least the main people that they're working with, because I don't want, like, I want people to be able to to like voice their concerns about each other, right? Without waiting like for 2 years, and then 2 years, all everything is built up, and then you get into a big fight, and you're like, oh
Yeah,
Jesus,
yeah.
like, let's deal with it, let's resolve things, let's talk about it. So I think that culture is developing, where as soon as there's an issue, somebody, like, even if it's not just with me or somebody else, they'll go have a one-on-one, and then they'll discuss, and I think that generally helps. And I think it's also a sign of the people we hire, that we want people to be able to resolve problems, right? We don't shy away from problems, but we should be able to resolve issues, especially if they're personal, or if there shouldn't be as many personal issues. But if it's work related, you want to be able to solve them. A lot of it's just miscommunication many a times. So yeah, we do like to imbibe that, man. And honestly, I've learned that it's much easier to say the truth all the time than to create like different narratives for different people. So, it's like it's easier. We say the same story to investors, to the team, to myself, to hires. It's like, how many stories do you want? It's like hard to keep one story in your head. How many stories are you gonna? And because there is a complexity in what we do, right? There's so many levels we want to work on, and so
And on that note, the complexity note, I want to shift to without the work you do. And my first question is building an impact for startup, right? It's where you actually tell everyone who you hire that we are not chasing profits because we want to earn money. We are chasing profit because we have to create an impact. Now, this is a tough task. Okay, you are getting a team to agree on a purpose is a tough task, especially when you are dealing with the unfortunate low income strata of our society, which are the waste pickers, on whom the larger impact problem will always be secondary. Their livelihoods will always come first. So how do you manage this? How have you managed this till
good
now?
question, great question. So I think the low income people are the least of our problems, because I mean, least of our worries in this situation, because when it comes to motivation, because we try to pay them what we think is a fair wage, and it just turns out that that is like twice how much they would make otherwise, right? So you're right, Ki, for them it's a bit like the impact is not like the most important thing. For them is money is important, and the ability to earn is important, but they're like a lot more easily um, satisfied, right? Because they do come from more trouble. So they get like, they're actually sometimes overwhelmed. They're like, wow, like these guys are being so nice. Like, what's the catch? We're like, oh, there's no catch. We're just being fair. So they're not like as big of a, I mean, I don't have concerns about them being motivated. For them, it's like, it's a transactional, and then they know that, we're doing this for the right reasons. And, but we also try to find a fair balance, right? Just because they are like a beneficiary, we want to help improve their lives, doesn't mean that we put them on a pedestal either, right? The goal is to treat them as fairly and equally as anybody else. And when it comes to other team members, yeah, it's like it's hard to find like and I have to kind of contend that like everyone has different purposes and motivations, and different ways of looking at life, right? For some people, money is important, and money and enough money can mean different things for different people, right? So I don't want people to work for free, or like I'm not looking for, besides maybe a volunteer or something, but like for I mean, maybe a temporary volunteer, but like we don't, even if we get interns, we pay them stipends. We try to, at least something very like minimal, like nothing really significant. But again, people who are working out here, and without, from my perspective, get a fair market salary, right? Or maybe sometimes above market. So they're not like, I'm not trying to be like, hey, compromise on what you think you want to earn. But guess what? We as a company are not focused on profit maximization. So if you're looking to make crores and crores in bonuses, that's not going to happen. You might make crores and crores in stock options 10, 20 years down the road, but that is not what we're optimizing for, right? That might be a consequence of the work that we're doing, but not the reason why we do things. And also it's a strong motivate. Like there's no never and like nobody's doubting the importance of the work at work, right? They're like, oh, this is like we're not doing dumb work. Like this is important,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that I felt like a lot of people struggled with in the different, like when I was in New York or like some people that I was working with, they were a bit more like, like what is really this thing you're working on? So no, but I think the point is that I think charity and sympathy are really hard to scale. So if somebody is if taking a big pay cut to work for you for a long period of time, that's not going to work. That person's going to burn out. That person's going to have some issues, especially if they're like married or it doesn't matter. They have some sort of like commitments, right? Like whether it's a sick parent or or like a wife or a kid or whatever, right? So you have to be like, the way to solve this problem. That's something. The way to solve this problem is to play the same game as capitalism, as markets, as any other companies playing, but to have the added financial hurdle of caring about impact, right? So I tell the team we have to be that much more excellent because we have to we won't abuse our employees, we'll pay fairly, we'll try and do things properly, which costs money because our competitors can get away with paying bad wages because it's just how things are, right? And so you have to kind of be like, look, we are shooting ourselves in the foot from an economic sense. Uh, but that is our non-negotiable. That means you have to be even more excellent in how we do our work, which can be very motivating, but it's just hard. So I think that's what I'm saying. Like I tell the team this, and I tell you this, tell anybody this. The next 2 years are really important because we have to prove dhanda banana. I have to prove out that
Hmm.
we can sustain the impact we want to create. So I feel like we've created the right system for it. Like the more money we make, the more revenue we make, the more waste will get recycled, the more waste because we'll get empowered, and the more waste, the more impact we'll have. It's a really nice cycle. But then we have to make the revenue, right? And then how much of the revenue translates into profit is something we can control. And we don't have to focus on maximizing profit, but we have to make sure we have enough profit to be able to sustain and scale our growth, right? So, and that is the art. And I think until now, we worked on technology, worked on the system, worked on where we want to go. For these next 2, 3 years, we have to be able to prove this out. Otherwise, it just becomes a really nice story. And that's why I feel like these are the two most important years of Without's life and also my life. So it's a little bit nerve wracking and really intense. But we feel like we have all the resources, right? We have the money, we have we have most of the team. I think we have to hire some more senior folks, but that's we've not been able to afford that because of the funding, etc. But I think when with this round closing, hopefully soon, we will be able to afford that, and then really set ourselves up. So it's like, many entrepreneurs don't even have that luxury. So we do have that. It's like I tell the team, we've been training for the Olympics for the last 3.5 years now, but that doesn't mean like, you win the Olympics. You have to still go and perform at the Olympics. Maybe, you can still shit the bed at the Olympics, and then you're like, oh shit, like I didn't win any medals. So like we're about to head into our Olympics is how I think about it.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed this one. Stay tuned for part 2.